Good to see you, sir. Here we go. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, I wanted to play this, but we decided we shouldn't play it because it could get copyright strike, and we don't want to get the episode. We don't want anybody to have any sort of a way to get it down.
Sure.
But it was the episode of you when you were on The View, and I think it was 2015 or 2006, like when you were running for president.
Right.
And you got introduced as our friend Donald Trump.
That's right.
Whoopi Goldberg gives you a big hug and a kiss. Joy Behar gives you a big hug. Barbara Walters gives you a big hug. They all loved you. They were all talking about how you might be conservative in your financial positions, but you're very liberal socially. They were talking about you in such a favorable light. The audience was cheering. And then you actually started winning in the polls, and then the machine started working towards you.
Yeah.
But there's probably no one in history that I've ever seen that's been attacked the way you've been attacked and the way they've done it, so coordinated and systematically. And when you see those same people in the past, very favorable to you, like Oprah, when you were on Oprah's show,
very.
She was encouraging you to
Last
be president.
week I did one of her last shows, I think maybe Thursday or Friday. That was a big deal, being on Oprah's show, the last one. And I was like one of the last shows in that final week. And I said, boy, we've come a long way since that.
What was it like?
The concept, it was really like two different lives. You know, I had a very wonderful life, but I wanted to do this. The Apprentice was still going very strong. We had 12 seasons, and we had actually 14 seasons, 12 years over. They had a couple of them.
Well, they canceled The Apprentice when you were running for president, correct?
No, they had Arnold Schwarzenegger do it. I was involved in that, and I had enough of it, and we did great. It was doing great, but they wanted me to stay. They all came to see me. They said, we're going to give you a contract. They wanted to extend my contract. Mark Burnett is a great guy. And they wanted to extend the contract. Mark said, you're crazy. Don't run. No. Nobody gives up prime time, they said. You know, it's one of those little things, which is probably true.
Nobody gives up prime time, though, for being president?
For running against 20-some-odd people, you know. It turned out to be 18 professional people, you know, mostly politicians. They said, who would do this? I mean, it's a long shot. Actually, the heads of NBC came over, the Paul Telegny, all the top people came over to see me, try and talk me out of it, because they wanted to have me extend. The Apprentice was doing well. So it was 14 seasons. It was 12 years. We had 2 seasons where we had a double, which rarely happens. It was just a hot show. And I said, you know, I want to do this. What happened is previously, like 3 years, 4 years before that, they did a poll. They had Mitt Romney, and somehow they put me in a poll, and I blew everybody away. I blew him away, which isn't that hard, frankly, but I blew everybody away. And I said, that's interesting, because I never really gave it that much real thought. I thought about it, but never real thought. But I saw these polls were very good. And so I was thinking about doing it then, but I had a contract with The Apprentice. Plus, I was building 2 big buildings at the time, and I wanted to make sure they got finished up properly, and it was one of those things. The kids were just sort of getting involved. They're very capable kids, but they were getting involved early on. So I did that. I got them done. I had some very good successes, and I came on, and then I thought about it for the next one after the Romney disaster, and I ran and I won against Hillary. It was quite an experience, but it was a different life because you're right, The View. I was on The View many, many times, and they loved me.
Just the way people would talk. I mean, even if people had criticisms about you, people that didn't like you, there was always feuds and stuff like that. But the reality was the thing turned on you when they found out that you were going to be president. It was very coordinated. And some people are catching on to that now. There's a lot of people that were longtime Democrats like Elon and Bill Ackman and all these different, very intelligent people.
And they support me now. Bill Ackman supports me. He's been very supportive, too.
This is what I wanted to ask you. What was it like when you actually got in? Because nobody really can prepare you for that. When you're running for president, you don't really know what it's going to be like when you actually get into office. What did you think it was going to be like?
In office or when I decided to run? So
when you got in.
When I was in. So when I was in and won and was in the White House, essentially. Yes. Well, first of all, it was very surreal.
I would imagine.
It's very interesting. When I got shot, it wasn't surreal. That should have been surreal. When I was laying on the ground, I knew exactly what was going on. I knew exactly where I was hit. They were saying you were hit all over the place because there was so much blood from the ear. You would know that better than anyone. When they get the ear torn up.
Ears bleed a lot,
they bleed. Anyway, so, and I was thinking the other day, when that happened, I really knew where I was. I knew exactly what happened. I said I wasn't hit anywhere else. With the presidency, it was a very surreal experience, okay?
Like, what's day one like? You win,
yeah,
you get inaugurated, holy shit, I'm the president.
Yeah, that's what happened. So I'm driving down Pennsylvania Avenue. I just built a building on Pennsylvania, the hotel, the old post office it was. We called it Trump National Hotel. And we sold it to the Waldorf Astoria. And it was a wonderful thing. But I'm driving down, I'm passing the hotel. You've never seen so many motorcycles, police, military. It was a major thing. I got off really the first time I used Air Force One, landed, and we're coming down, and it was very beautiful. I mean, it was incredible. And we're going down Pennsylvania Avenue in the opposite direction. Normally you're used to going one way, and all of a sudden you're going the other way. The street was loaded up, and I wanted to go out, and I wanted to wave to everybody, but that wasn't smart. The kid's a little bit dangerous, right? I mean, when you watch like Kennedy and some others, right? But I really felt, I don't know, the love was so crazy. And so I did get out of the car for a brief, just for a very short walk. I thought it was very important to do. And Melania got out with her beautiful dress on that became sort of a staple. It was, people loved it. And Barron, and we're walking down the street. But where it really got amazing, we get to the White House, and now it's a little bit before dark, beautiful. And we went up to the president's quarters. They call them the presidential quarters. And I'm standing in this beautiful hallway. It's funny. Nobody ever talks about the White House as being beautiful inside. You think it's going to be, everything's going to be all metal doors and stuff. It's not. It's so beautiful. I made my money largely on luxury. The hallway is like 25 feet wide. The ceiling heights are, it's so beautiful. But I was standing there, and I said to the guys, I want to see the Lincoln bedroom. I had never seen the Lincoln bedroom. I'd heard about the Lincoln bedroom. And I was standing with my wife. I said, do you believe it? This is the Lincoln bedroom. I mean, it was like, it was amazing. Because look, if you love the country, but here you're, the Lincoln bedroom. And the bed, he was very tall. He was 6'6", which then would be like Barron.
Right.
Would be like Barron Trump. He's 6'9", but 6'6". He was very tall. Then on top of that, he wore that. Yeah, there it is. It's a long bed, elongated bed. And because people were shorter than you see, some of the chairs are very, very low to the ground, actually. But he had the long bed, and they had you had the Gettysburg Address right on that, right under that. You can't see it here, but right there, the original version of the Gettysburg Address. And this is the original, and I'm looking, and I just looked around. I said, do you believe this? Because I was never a politician. First of all, even if you were a politician, but I was never a politician. I sort of just started, right?
Right.
And all of a sudden, I'm standing in the White House. And it was very, very surreal. That room was so beautiful to me, much more beautiful than it actually is. To me, when I looked at the bed, and the bed, you could see it was a little bit longer, had to be a little bit longer. He lost his son, and they suffered, the two of them suffered from melancholia. They didn't call it depression. They called it melancholia, and they suffered from it. He was a very depressed guy, and she was a very depressed woman, more so than him. And on top of that, they lost their son, whose name was Ted. And it was just seeing it in the little pictures, a little tiny picture. I mean, you can't see the details there. Little tiny, everything the way it was, a little tiny picture of Ted, who he lost. And it was devastating. And he was, look, he was in a war. He was having a hard time because he couldn't beat Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee won like 13 battles in a row, and he was getting like a phobia, like a fighter. A lot about the fight stuff. But like, I went to a UFC fight, and it was a champion who was 14-1 about a year ago. You would know the names. 14-1, and the only guy he lost to was this one guy, but the guy that he was fighting was like almost just an average fighter. Lost numerous times, but he beat this one guy. So I said, okay.
I really don't know who you're talking about. I'm trying to.
I will figure it out.
Okay.
But about a year ago. But the point is that he lost. He wasn't nearly the fighter as the one. But the one who was not nearly the fighter had beaten. He's the only guy that beat the champ like 5 years before. And I said, I'll take the guy that won the other fight. And that's what happened. He beat him a second time.
Sometimes
Lincoln,
psychological advantages.
Yeah, what is this crazy thing? Lincoln had I don't know, I've never read this. I heard it from people in the White House who really understand what was going on with the whole life of the White House. But Lincoln had the yips about, in a way, as the golfers would say. He had a phobia about Robert E. Lee. He said, I can't beat Robert, because Robert E. Lee won many battles in a row. He was just beating the hell out of him. You know, they tried to get Robert E. Lee to be on the North, but he said, no, I have to be with my state. You know, the state was his whole thing, and he went to the South. And he was, I've had generals tell me, we have some great generals, the real generals, not the ones you see on television, the ones that beat ISIS with me. We defeated ISIS in record time. It was supposed to take years, and we did it in a matter of weeks. These are great generals. These are tough guys. These are not woke guys. But their favorite general in terms of genius was Robert E. Lee.
In terms of strategy, you mean?
Strategically. He took a war that should have been over in a few days, and it was, you know, years of hell, of vicious war. And so here I am standing there, and again, I had never really done this before. You know, I ran a number of months before I won. I probably, I guess if you max it out, it would be a year, something like that. So I had never run for office. And I did well. I mean, I went into debates. We had 18 people, including me, and then slowly but surely they started to disappear. We had debates, good debates.
Everyone's aware of all this stuff. But what I want to get to is, like, what was the experience once you got inside?
It
like,
was just
what did you think it was going to be like in terms of, like, your ability to govern?
Yeah.
Like, this is your first experience governing anything. You've never been a governor. You've never been a mayor.
Yeah,
right.
private stuff.
Business.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden you're inside the White House.
The biggest thing was just that first moment of being in this hallowed, it was really a hallowed place to me. It was
surreal.
It was beyond. To me, that was the experience. It was a surreal experience. And then with time, that wears off. With time, it becomes, you know, your place where you stay. And I was doing a lot of, I had two things that I really focused on: governing the country and survival. Because from the moment I won, before I got to office, all of a sudden, they came down. I mean, nobody has ever been treated that way. And you see that. I mean, you see where in the Washington Post very early on they said, well, now the impeachment stuff starts. And it did. I mean, it literally started from the beginning. So I had survival and run the nation. I had a combination. Most people don't have the survival. They get in.
What did you expect, though, in terms of, like, once you got inside, you had to appoint all these people? Yeah. Like, how many appointments did you have to make?
Well, you have actually 10,000 appointments. Now, they're different. You know, you have big ones, and then they appoint 100 people and 200 people. But the president really is involved with approximately 10,000 appointments. So you'll appoint a Secretary of State, and he or she will appoint a lot of people. So it's a lot. But in terms of major ones, you probably have like 100, but they're big ones. Treasury, State, military.
And how did you know who to appoint?
Well, I didn't. I had no experience. You have to understand. Joe.
So
I was there 17 times in Washington, and I never stayed over. According to the press, which I think is probably right, over the years, I was only there 17 times. I never stayed over. So now I'm sitting there, I'm saying, this place is gorgeous, but, you know, I don't know anybody. It's like you know, you go to certain areas, and other areas, they may be great. Washington was great. Washington's not so great right now. We got to fix it. We got to make it better. A very dangerous place, very badly maintained place. We're going to make it great. We're going to make it better. We're going to bring it back. But I wasn't a Washington guy. I was a New York guy. I was a New York builder, and I built buildings in New York, and I knew that whole world, but I didn't know the Washington world too well. And all of a sudden, you're supposed to be appointing top people. So
what did you think it was going to be like? Versus, like, did you have any ideas of what it was going to be like, and what was different?
Well, I was always involved in politics, but usually from the standpoint of a donor. I was a donor. I was a big donor. I gave money to politicians. I enjoyed politics.
Mostly Democrats, right?
Both, really, pretty much both. I actually pictures of Ronald Reagan and me when I was very young.
You were a Democrat until, like, what year?
I was a Democrat. I could get you the exact, but the early 90s, I switched over eventually. Actually, they had a reform party. I was thinking about doing that for a little while, but then fortunately I didn't because it's very hard. It's a two-party system. And anytime you hear third party, I know you like RFK Jr., and so do I. He's a fantastic guy.
I do, but I thought that being an independent was nonsense.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work because even if you do great, you're not going to get Congress. In other words, you need now to say, okay, now I'll get half of Congress that's never going to vote for you. So even if you got there, which is very hard, and I know how you feel about Bobby, and I feel the same way, and he's now with us. But it doesn't. It's pure and simple. It's a two-party system.
Right.
And somebody, I won't mention his name, but somebody spent $250 million trying to get the nomination as a Reform Party candidate or whatever, and they got just nowhere. You get eaten. You just get eaten. The system eats you alive.
Right.
So it was really somebody that not only was new to Washington, but was new to politics. So in the office of the presidency, over the years, all those presidents, you've had 92% were politicians and 8% were generals. General Eisenhower, General Washington, right? General George Washington, you had generals. So it's 8% no admirals, 8% generals, and 92% politicians. They're politicians and they go on. So they never had a business guy, or they never had a guy that wasn't elected to an office. They were all like Ronald Reagan he was a movie actor, but he became the governor of California for, I think, 2 terms, and then he ran. So you'd never had a thing like this. But in terms of me, and sometimes I'd use it as an excuse, and I don't like having excuses actually, but I'd use it as an excuse. I had to rely on people that I respected or liked, but that I didn't know that well because I didn't know them that well. Some of those people I campaigned against because, when you have 18 people, we had mostly politicians running in the election, running in the primaries. And they got knocked out one by one, but I got to like some of them. Some of them I didn't like at all, and I don't like them now. And I'd rely on them, and I'd rely on other people. So all of a sudden, people would come in, I'd like to recommend so-and-so to be Secretary of State, and I'd have 3-4 people recommend. One thing I can tell you, Joe, everybody wants the position.
Of course.
No, but sometimes I'll hear, a lot of people don't want to work with Trump because Trump is tough to work with, et cetera. Let me tell you, everybody wants to be any one of these positions. They die for it.
Of course.
Now, they don't want to be known. I mean, there's a particular guy in New York, primarily, very big, very successful, very strong, very political, although he's not a politician. He'd give anything to be Secretary of State, but if they ask him, no, I don't think I would do it. But in the meantime, begging for it, begging. I
believe you.
Everybody wants it.
But what I wanted to get to...
By the way, no matter what you do, but it's very dangerous to pick somebody outside of a politician because a politician's been basically vetted for years.
Right.
You pick a business guy, and they've never been vetted at all, and they're the head of a big company or something, but they've never been vetted. You know nothing about his personal life. You know nothing about where he's been. When you put him in, it's a little bit dangerous because all of a sudden they get checked up, and you hear things that you're saying, wow, this is not going to work out too well. So it's very dangerous. Picking people that are outside of politics is somewhat dangerous.
So you're kind of stuck in a position where you have to pick established people. And then the problem with established people is established people are already indoctrinated into the system. And
they're stiffs in many cases.
Stiffs.
They're survivors. I find that,
What do you mean by stiffs? When you say stiffs?
A stiff, they don't have nothing. They have nothing. Or they're smart and survive. One little thing. So there was a congressman years before I ran, and I was very close to him. And I needed a license on something, and he was very important in getting the license. But it was a little bit controversial, the license, this particular thing that was being licensed. But I was close to this guy. and helped him and everything else. And I went to him. I said, "I'd like to have your help." And he said, "Let me take a look at it." I said, "Ooh, that's not too good, but I really hope you're going to help." And anyway, he tapped me along for a long period of time and ultimately didn't do it. And I said, "You are a stiff. You could have done this thing so easy, etc." But it was controversial. He was in Congress for many years, like 28 years. And, there's a reason when somebody's there for 28 years, you got to be sort of smart.
Right.
You have all the scandals. And I realized he was a survivor.
And so they never do anything controversial.
Well,
they never take any chances or speak their opinion. It's outside of the... Yeah.
Sometimes. And yet I don't disrespect him for it.
So
I actually respected the guy more in a certain way. I said,
because he did survive.
You know what? He's been there for 28 years, and he made it through. A lot of people don't make it through.
It's a good way for non-exceptional people to survive.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly is.
So you're in there. You have 10,000 appointments you have to make. So you're getting advice from people. And at one point in time, did you have a moment in time where you realized, these are bad choices? Like, some of these people I shouldn't have had in there.
Oh, yeah. I think so. The one question that you'll ask me, that I think you'll ask me, that people seem to ask, and I always come up with the same answer. The one mistake, because I had a lot of success, great economy, great everything. Everything was great. The military, we rebuilt it, biggest tax cuts in history, all this stuff. We had a great presidency. 3 Supreme Court justices. Most people get none. You pick them young. This way they're there for 50 years, right? So, even if a president is there for 8 years, oftentimes they never have a chance. I had 3. It was sort of the luck of the draw. But I will say that it always comes back to the same answer. The biggest mistake I made was I picked some people. I picked some great people, but you don't think about that. I picked some people that I shouldn't have picked. I picked a few people that I shouldn't have picked. And
neocons?
Yeah, neocons, or bad people, or disloyal people, or
people that were just
people
bad,
that were into the
people got bad advice.
Yeah, you're reading about them a little bit today. A guy like Kelly, who was a bully, but a weak person. You know more about bullies than anybody probably around, because you deal in a certain sport where the bullies are exposed very quickly.
Yeah.
But he's bad. Bolton was an idiot, but he was great for me, because I'd go in with a guy like a John Bolton. John Bolton. A friend of mine called me up. I was picking Bolton, and he's a very smart guy. His name is Phil Ruffin. He's a very rich guy from Las Vegas. He's a great card player. He doesn't play cards, but he's a great player. He's just a natural. Got poker sense, right? The good old poker sense. And Phil Ruffin is a very, very wise kind of a guy, and one of the richest people around, and has had great success and understands people. So it was in that I was picking Bolton, or I picked Bolton. He called up. He said, "Don't pick him. Why? He's a bad guy." Now, he wasn't in politics at all. He's in various businesses. He said, "He's a bad guy. It always works out bad with that guy." And I said, "Oh, man, I wish you told me this 2 weeks ago. I already hired him. He's here." And he was right. But he was good in a certain way. He's a nut job. And every time I had to deal with a country, when they saw this whack job standing behind me, they said, "Oh, man, Trump's going to go to war with us." He was with Bush when they went stupidly into the Middle East. They should have never done it. I used to say it as a civilian. So I always got more publicity than other people. And it wasn't like I was trying. In fact, I don't know exactly why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Oh, I could definitely tell you. You said a lot of wild shit.
Maybe. Maybe
he said a lot of wild shit, and then CNN, in all their brilliance, by highlighting your wild shit, made you much more popular.
Yeah.
And they boosted you in the polls because people were tired of someone talking in this bullshit, pre-prepared politician lingo. And even if they didn't agree with you, they at least knew whoever that guy is, that's him. That's really him. Yeah. When you see certain people talk, certain people in the public eye, you don't know who they are. You have no idea who they are. It's very difficult to know. You see them in conversations. They have these pre-planned answers. They say everything. It's very rehearsed. You never get to the meat of it. one of the beautiful things about you is that you free ball. Like you get out and you do these huge events and you're just talking and you're making. We've highlighted you on the show many times when you did this Biden impression where he's walking around, he doesn't know what he's doing. It's funny. It's stand up. It's funny stuff. But it's like you and you were making fun of Elon one time. You were doing an Elon impression. It's great. You have like comedic instincts. Like when you said to Hillary, you'd be in jail. Like that's great timing. Yeah. But it's like that kind of stuff was unheard of as a politician. Like no one had done that. And I think...
You know, it's funny. You need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business, first of all. It's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous business.
It's the most, for a job?
Yes. I mean, other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop, it's the most dangerous business.
It's the most dangerous. Being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. I mean, you haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts. And they've brushed those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about them.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden, how hard people would be attacking the right, how they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But I think he's in good shape because it's only consequential presidents. If you take